Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's October 14th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And just a quick look at our daily chart. You can see we did come back and make a higher low and retest that trend line. And so far, prices are holding, or the trend line's holding. Once again, we've gotten stymied at the 21 EMA here. Um, we've opened up another bar because it's a little after 6. I'm a little later getting this done tonight, but not a total surprise that we prices came back and tested this line again. You can see we're working sideways here, but it's hard not to do anything but work sideways with that big of a bar. But we've had two inside bars and this or that are both inside this one. So will we push higher now? We'll just have to see. But now that we've had a double test of this line and still closed much higher, we ended up closing lower than yesterday, but we traded higher and we still closed way off the lows. So um, to me, it looks like this market still wants to go higher, but it's just hard to say. That was a pretty big sell-off, so we could still attempt another push down to try to get a second leg down. Um, So we'll have to see what tomorrow brings. But with two bounces off that trend line, I would not be surprised if we work higher now. So we'll just have to see what tomorrow brings. But that's how it looks to me as of now. So, but let's flip over to the 2000 tick chart, take a look at it, and we'll go through the trades. But it was a big up day for the most part. We sold off early and then reversed and had a big up day. And you can see here we had the spike and moved down early, and then we reversed. And really what you would try to look for here is you had this first leg up, and you'd probably go to here and then look for your second leg. And you can see we didn't quite get that measured leg. If you measured to here and here, you get real close. You still don't quite get it. So, and that's not uncommon on this big of a move. You may not always get that big, an equal measured move, but prices are probably going to try. And you can see we came close. Um, but anyway, two legs up after the big move down, and lots of trades today. It was a pretty good trading day. So prices did trend up for the majority of the day. I mean, we started this uptrend just after the 8:30 open, and we really trended up. Well, we trended up to about 1 o'clock, and then from that point on, we just kind of worked sideways in the close, and we did end up turning back down some. We didn't quite close on the highs. So, but anyway, let's zoom in here. There was a one high volatility news item, but it was a speaker for the Feds, and there's not really much you can do on those. So I usually don't worry too much about those. You want to be aware of them in case something happens while they're speaking, but generally you can't predict much there, and you can't worry too much about it. So, but 7 o'clock came just as we were making a high here, and then we tried to go higher once, twice, and there's actually a new low here. So a first entry, second entry. So that's a second entry short after we got a confirmation of the trend line, then made two lower highs and a second entry short. I like going short on the lower high, but when you got another chance here on the second entry, if you didn't enter here, definitely enter here. And it runs down, then bounces, comes back to the trend line again, and we actually get a close outside. It's not a big close, but we're just kind of working sideways, and so there's no real setup to get in that sell-off there. But we do come back here, close outside. It tries to move to a new high and just makes a lower high. To break below that is actually your second entry was here, but you couldn't enter on that second entry because you're still inside this trend line. But when we make that lower high, I like going short there. It should be good for a scalp, and it could just move on down because we've got a long way to go to hit the other side of the trend channel. But the main thing we're doing here, we may not even get to the other side. We're just trying to make a new low, which we did here. So you'd want to try to ride this back down on the attempt to get a new low. And you could argue this is a triple test here. Let me zoom in here. I know that's kind of hard to see probably. You could argue this is a triple test, but that signal bar doesn't qualify, so there's nothing there. But we get the closeout outside up here, and we get a couple of legs to a new low, and then we reverse. I don't see anything here that would make me want to go long. Um, there's two legs back here, but again, there's no setup. And this thing just rockets off here, and this is a spike in channel that forms within a possible another trend line that we didn't get confirmed to here, but we quickly got a break thereafter and a move to a new high. So um, really you had to play this secondary channel, which I've marked green here, or you wouldn't have had anything to play on the way up because it never came back to this trend line. So hopefully you see the spike in channel there. I think I posted it that way early. I don't know if I added this. I think I added this other channel for you, but I can't remember. If I didn't, always draw it off those first two swings too, just in case. And you can see we did bounce there. I didn't see an entry there, and it looks like it probably would have gotten you a scalp if you entered there. But I don't see a setup there. It's just a first entry. Yeah, there's well over almost 4 points, well over 3 points. So, but anyway, there's not much opportunity to enter on the way up here. This is a second entry, but it's an inside bar. This is all still just working up there. Now you do come back here and get a second entry. There's 3 trend bars, so you might look at that as a leg with a break and a new low, but really it looks like the downtrend starts here. So to me, I only treated that like a first entry, but you could argue it to be a second entry. I marked it green because either way, you still seem to get a close outside a new low. So I think you could consider entering there. It's a little convoluted, but I think you could argue. I mean, you could almost argue it as blue. But I think the better thing to do is wait on the high or low and see if you get one. And you do get one. It's a little sideways there, but that's clearly a high or low. Reasonable 10-point size signal bar. So I like going long there. I mean, you can clearly see that trend line working all the way up, and it's continuing to work right there. We come back with another second entry here, but I don't think the signal bar is good enough. And then we turn back down and we get a break. And we actually get 2 legs down and a second entry long, and that's a good signal bar. I marked that green just because timing is the issue on a trade like this. And while it clearly looks like 2 legs, it could be 3 legs like so. I don't think that turned out to be the case, but you don't know that until. So it'd be easy to enter early here. So you got to be careful with this first, second entry. But because it's so far away from the EMA, if you have room to scalp out there, you probably want to take that. I marked it green because the better trade will obviously be the higher low. But sometimes you don't get a higher low. And if you're being real conservative, you'll get left behind. But I like that one. There's a failure here, but you can't enter. It's not a place you want to enter a failure, and it just continues on to a new high. So now you got your break, a couple of legs up to a new high, and you're way away from the EMA, and now you get a lower high. This is a second entry. Actually, I take that back. Unless you count this a double bottom, which you could. If you count this as a double bottom, that would be a first entry, second entry. But if you start here, because that is a leg, so that would be a first entry. Actually, there's a break there, second entry, and that would be a third entry. So it'd be first entry, second entry, third entry. That'd be a fourth entry. So I just think you need to wait on the lower high here. I didn't mark this. I mean, that's a pretty strong move up with a lot of momentum. So wait on the lower high and make sure you're still got a long way back to the EMA, which you do here. And you can see that was a nice, easy trade. Probably didn't get, you may not get anything more in the scalp there, but it's a nice, easy trade. And makes a few swings down, and you get a break, move to a new low. And it's tempting to enter there, but again, I think you need a higher low, and that doesn't come till way over here. So, and now you got a triple test too, a higher low, a nice signal bar, and you could even argue there's a hidden second entry there. So I like that one. Again, there's a higher low here. I didn't like this one because that looks a little congested. Both these bars are inside this bar, and everything's right there at the EMA. Because we are working somewhat sideways, we don't necessarily have a range here yet. Because we've got a lot of support, but you can't necessarily say, hey, this is a range yet. So although EMA is starting to flatten out here. It's still slowly kind of working higher. It's just starting to work where it may be turning down here. So if we're trending, you got to be careful going long right into the EMA. If it's a for sure range, don't worry about it, because you'll notice on ranges the prices will just shoot right through in most cases. But if it's trending, the EMA becomes important. So you always want to watch that and kind of pay attention to it. But here I'd say um, you can't necessarily say for certain this is a range yet. At least not based off the way it's drawn here later. Maybe there's some resistance up here like so. So that's something else to be concerned about. But maybe there's maybe there's a range there, but I just wouldn't go long in that EMA just yet. So it turns out to be a great move up. Um, Again, you get what I'd call a lower high that's maybe tradable there, but I think you got to wait. Um, if you draw your trend line, I don't think you have a close outside there yet. And you want to close outside the new high, which doesn't come till here, and now it's congested. It's not a very good signal bar. Just no way to enter there. But you get 2 legs down. That was a second entry long, but that signal bar doesn't qualify. We ended up going lower yet, so you might consider entering there. But again, that looks really sideways and congested. If this would have broke higher and closed, maybe, but I think you need a higher low, and that doesn't come till here. You actually get a reversal here, but you're not really looking for a reversal here at this point. It's really starting to look like it might be a range there. We really don't get any consistent resistance out of it, but if you drew it where it originally was, you can see it does act as support somewhat there, but we just shoot right on through it. So in the end, I mean, is there a range there? Maybe, but there's definitely no consistent resistance up here to trade on, that you want to trade downward on. So, but anyway, we end up making a couple of moves up here, and then we turn down. I don't see anything that you can go long up here. You definitely can't get long right in here into these highs. And then next thing you know, we're turning down and we're working down, close outside. And you get a few swings here, but again, there's nothing tradable there. And then we bounce down here, but this is just the first 2 swings. So you don't know if that's the bottom or not there. So you need to wait, and you need another touch of it, which we do end up getting a couple more touches there, and then it comes back again. So now you got a higher low with a good signal bar. I like going long there. You could argue there's a reversal here as well. I didn't like this one because you got a doji there, so it's starting to set up like congestion, and there's some previous resistance right across there. So I didn't really like going long there. I think it's a little risky. But it ends up working. So if you took it, it is a failure, and it could act as a trap. But I just don't think there's enough people going to get fooled right there into going short just yet. But it does end up moving on up pretty good. Now you do get a close outside. You don't quite get a new high. You just get a double top there. But we're in an uptrend again. So, and we clearly confirm the trend there. And you get a first entry, and this is a second entry. But I don't like that signal bar. It looks a little sideways. And once again, you might say, hey, that looks like a reversal, but you end up getting a inside bar, and you're right into the highs now. So just sit tight. And notice you get a close outside here. And notice how it gaps over. Notice how there's a gap between there. They don't overlap each other. When you see that where there's supposed to be a trend line or a support resistance line, that usually tells you you're in the right place. Don't ask me why it does that. I call those thin spots, but why it does that, I have no idea. It doesn't really matter. Just know that it happens a lot, and when you see it, pay attention to it. But you get a break, and you get a couple of moves up, and then you turn down. Now there's a lower high here. I didn't mark it, but you could trade that because there's still a good bit back there. I'm going to at least mark that green here. Because you do get a close outside way down here, and even though we're still adhering to the channel, I think you have to count that as a break, and it looks like 2 legs up, too close to 2 measured legs. So we're overdue to come back to the EMA. So if you took that, I definitely wouldn't take that one, but if you took this one, I'm okay with it. And it turns out to be a great trade. If you took that, you probably get a runner, and it runs all the way down here. You actually get a little close outside there and swing down, and so that's the first close outside. It looks like, even though that's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth entry, it still looks kind of like two legs down. So I wouldn't have a problem going long there. You're better off to wait on the higher low, but you don't ever get one there. So this actually broke lower and turned up. It didn't end up being an engulfing bar. So I think you have to trade it above that bar if you want to go long there. I marked it blue. You could argue it's close to green, blue. The safer trade would be to wait on the higher low, as always, but you don't get one, and that's what happens sometimes on these breakouts. Quickly reverses back with a trend, and there is a second entry here again. Notice your new high, first entry, then a second entry, but again, it's an inside bar, but it runs up. And the only reason I didn't like this one is because you don't have a new high yet, but then it makes a triple test. If you've got room back to that EM, take that trade. And this turns out to be a range up here, and it just runs straight to the other side. And then you get a triple test down here. You also get the close outside and a new low. So I like going long there. Nice signal bar. It is a little sideways, but with that triple test, if it can't go lower, at some point it's going higher, and usually a triple test is good enough. I like that one. It runs up. You get a close outside, new high, and you get a failed breakout. Again, you're better off to wait on the lower high, which never comes, but you may take that trade. And so I marked it green. And notice that it is a first entry, second entry. It's a second entry too, although you're not really looking for that, but the market tends to move in twos. So if you see 2 legs on a failed breakout with a nice signal bar, that's a second entry, that far away from the EMA, you probably want to take it. I marked it green because you'd be better off to wait on the lower high, but as we say, you don't always get a lower high. So you have to kind of decide, is it worth taking it or not? Then we get a close outside, move to a new low, and then we just kind of work sideways and run up again, and then turn back down, and we get another bounce here, and then yet another one here. But this is an inside bar. This one is tempting because it's a second entry, and you do have a close outside and new low, and there's definitely a 1, 2, 3. We were still inside that trend line. I wasn't crazy about it, but that's another one you might argue for. And if you'd got a good signal bar here, I'd have marked it blue, but you don't get one. It runs up, and then you get another test right here, and you can argue all day long that that's a triple test because it is. And so I like going short right there on that one because you can see we've turned down there multiple times. It runs down here and it bounces down here again. All we did was our resistance just kind of moved down and it got real consistent across here. And then we still have, except for right in here, we were pretty much consistent along these lows here. So maybe you take that one. Then it bounces here, but I don't see anything you can trade. Runs up, close outside, first entry, second entry. Again, now that it's pretty obvious, this looks like a range. I don't think you want to go long into the middle of the range. It gaps over there again anyway. So I don't know if you'd have got in that trade or not, but it runs up here and turns down, and now you've got a triple to quadruple test there. I like going short. You actually get a lower high here too, but again, it's right back in the middle, and that's always dangerous. So just sit tight. And it looks like we get an overshoot here that turns back up, and again, you get a close outside and a new high all in one bar there. Actually, I think that makes a 2-bar matching high, but I think that's good enough to take that trade right there. It clearly looks like 2 legs up, and you've already had all that resistance across there, and that's a pretty bearish bar. If it breaks below that, I'd go with it. You don't know that it's going to do this, but still, you got a long way back. Even if you come up short like you had been, you still got plenty of room back. And so I like that one. Boom. And you could have ridden this well after 2:30. I mean, believe it or not, all that happened in about 8 or 9 minutes. So that would have been a nice move to catch. And then, of course, we're into 2:30 and there's nothing else there you can really trade. So there it is again. Um, we came back down and retested the trend line on the daily chart and then rallied pretty strongly from there on. We did close off the highs, but that's still a pretty good move up. We just didn't quite close on the highs. So I liked today. There were some nice trade setups today, so I think it was a decent trading day and some nice movement here most of the day till just after lunch. But if you understand ranges and you can find the support and resistance, I like those kind of trades myself. Because they're so, if it's consistent support and resistance in a range, it's just so predictable that you just have to get used to it. It takes a little getting used to, but once you understand it and you've watched it and practiced it enough, it can become it can become some good trading on on those ranges like that. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.